Marriage doesn't usually end in silence. It ends in arguments, tears, slammed doors. But for me, Nathan Briggs, 42 years old, Staff Sergeant with the 82nd Airborne Division, it ended in a PDF attachment. I was in Kandahar, 4 months into deployment, surrounded by the dust and roar of helicopters when her message arrived. The subject line was cold. Let's be adults about this. 3 sentences later, my entire world was gone. Becky, my wife of 13 years, had already filed the divorce papers. She had already emptied our joint savings. She had already moved her new boyfriend, Jeremy, into the house that my military paychecks had built. I read it once, then again, closed my laptop, took a shower, went on duty like nothing had happened. But inside me, something sharp was taking shape, because Becky had no idea who she was dealing with. The air in Kandahar always carried grit, like the desert itself was trying to grind you down. I was sitting at a weather-beaten table in the communications tent when I opened my inbox. My name is Nathan Briggs, and after 13 years of marriage, I thought I understood the woman waiting for me back home. That belief shattered the moment I saw her subject line. Let's be adults about this. At first, I thought it was a bad joke. Soldiers get plenty of strange emails from home. But this wasn't playful or sarcastic. It was clinical, detached, like a memo from HR. I clicked it open. Her words were short, like they'd been rehearsed. She was filing for divorce. She had already emptied our joint account. She had already moved Jeremy, her new boyfriend, into our home in Spokane. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no anger. Just a severed line, clean and efficient. I stared at the screen, blinking against the glare of the fluorescent light. My first instinct wasn't rage, it was disbelief. We had built a life together. We'd laughed over midnight pizza, argued over car payments, celebrated anniversaries with cheap champagne and burnt steaks. And now, it was gone, condensed into 3 flat sentences. Around me, the tent buzzed with the usual sounds: soldiers talking, printers humming, boots scuffing the dirt floor. No one noticed my face drain of color. I couldn't let them notice. In deployment, emotions are luxuries you can't afford. I logged out, closed the laptop, and walked to the showers. The water was lukewarm, tinged with rust, but I scrubbed like I could wash her words off my skin. Back in my quarters, I sat on the edge of the cot and stared at the dented metal footlocker where I kept letters from Becky. Birthday cards, notes she'd slipped into my rucksack, all those little reminders of forever. They looked like props now, staged pieces in a play I hadn't realized was ending. That night, I composed my reply. Not an essay, not a plea, not even a demand for answers. Just one word. Understood. I pressed send, shut the laptop, and lay down, staring at the ceiling fan that clicked with every rotation. On the surface, I was calm. Inside, it was different. Something cold and precise began to take form. Not grief, not fury, something sharper. Becky thought she had closed the book on us. She thought a 3-sentence email was the final chapter. But what she didn't know, and what Jeremy would soon learn, is that I don't start fights. I finish them. And this story, it was only just beginning. Looking back, the signs were there long before Becky's email reached me in Kandahar. My name is Nathan Briggs, and if I'm honest with myself, my marriage had been unraveling months before I left for deployment. I just didn't want to see it. At first, it was small things. The way she stopped asking about my day when I came home from training. The way dinners got quieter, as though she was chewing on secrets instead of food. She said she was tired. She said I was distracted. I wanted to believe her. Then came the late nights at the dental office where she worked reception. Becky had always been home by 6. Suddenly, it was 8, sometimes 9, with excuses about a staff meeting or a system update. She wasn't the type to lie, or so I thought, but her stories started to sound rehearsed. She began going to the gym 3 times a week. I remember one evening watching her lace up brand new sneakers and pack a shiny water bottle into a gym bag. I kissed her on the cheek and said, "Proud of you." She smiled thinly and left. But when she came home, she didn't look flushed or sweaty. Her hair was perfect, her makeup untouched, and there was a scent clinging to her clothes, a cologne I didn't own. New friends appeared too, names I didn't recognize, people from Zumba class or the office. But when I asked if I could meet them, she brushed it off. "They're just acquaintances," she'd say, turning her back as she folded laundry that suddenly seemed fancier than before. Her phone became a fortress. Before, she'd leave it on the counter, screen lit up with messages from her sister or coworkers. But now, always face down, always locked. Once, I walked into the room, and she shoved it into her pocket like she'd been caught stealing. She laughed nervously, muttered something about a surprise she was planning, but my gut told me otherwise. The hardest part wasn't the suspicion, it was the silence. Becky didn't yell, she didn't accuse, she didn't cry, she just pulled away, like a tide retreating, leaving me stranded without even realizing the water was gone. Most men in my situation would have confronted her, demanded answers. But I'm a soldier. I've learned to observe, to gather intel, to prepare for the worst without showing my hand. So I started taking precautions, quiet ones. I moved our most important documents, our marriage license, my discharge papers, the VA loan deed, into a storage unit she didn't know about. I tucked away heirlooms, like my grandfather's watch and my mother's silver, things I couldn't risk losing. And I opened a separate bank account, diverting a slice of my pay into it, small enough she wouldn't notice, big enough to keep me standing if the ground collapsed. The night before deployment, she hugged me at the airport. Her arms felt stiff, like she was hugging a stranger. "Stay safe, okay?" she said. Her eyes were dry, no tears. I boarded the plane with my rifle and rucksack, telling myself I was leaving my home behind. I didn't realize until much later I was leaving my marriage behind too. 2 weeks after Becky's email, I was sitting in the mess hall with a tray of powdered eggs and instant coffee when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting a routine alert, maybe a weather warning, or a message from command. Instead, it was a bank notification. Withdrawal, $88,500. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. I set my fork down and opened the app. My balance stared back at me, gutted to almost nothing. Not just that withdrawal, but dozens of smaller ones over the past few weeks. Becky had been bleeding our account dry like a patient hooked to a slow IV. And now, the total left was laughable. $22.37. The mess hall around me blurred into noise. Laughter, silverware clattering, boots dragging across concrete. Everything sounded far away, like I was underwater. My savings, our savings, was gone. 13 years of scrimping, deployments, missed birthdays, promotions. All's funneled into an account that now sat in Jeremy's pocket. 2 weeks after Becky's email, I was sitting in the mess hall with a tray of powdered eggs and instant coffee when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting a routine alert, maybe a weather warning or a message from command. Instead, it was a bank notification. Withdrawal, $88,500. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. I set my fork down and opened the app. My balance stared back at me, gutted to almost nothing. Not just that withdrawal, but dozens of smaller ones over the past few weeks. Becky had been bleeding our account dry like a patient hooked to a slow IV. And now, the total left was laughable, $22.37. The mess hall around me blurred into noise. Laughter, silverware clattering, boots dragging across concrete. Everything sounded far away, like I was underwater. My savings, our savings, was gone. 13 years of scrimping, deployments, missed birthdays, promotions, all funneled into an account that now sat in Jeremy's pocket. That night, after my shift, I called the bank from a dusty corner of the comms tent. The woman on the other end confirmed my fear. Becky had been moving money from our joint account almost from the moment my deployment began. Small withdrawals at first, $200 here, $500 there, then larger ones, thousands at a time, until the last transfer that cleaned out nearly everything. "Is there anything you can do?" I asked, my voice low, steady. "I'm sorry, Sergeant Briggs," she said softly. "Your wife is a joint account holder. Legally, she's entitled." I hung up without replying. My pulse wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. Instead, I felt that same cold clarity again, the one that had crept into me the night I read her email. This wasn't grief anymore. It was reconnaissance. Later, I logged into our home security system, something I had installed before deployment as a way to feel close to home. The cameras connected easily, and within seconds, I was staring at my own driveway, 7,000 miles away. That's when I saw it. A strange truck parked in front of the garage. Not a neighbor's, not family. Big, black, with mud-caked tires. And then, a man I didn't recognize stepped out of my front door like he owned the place. He bent down, whistled, and my dog, bounded toward him with a wagging tail. I watched him sip coffee from a mug I had bought Becky on our 10th anniversary. I watched him wear my Seahawks sweatshirt, the one Becky had always stolen on cold nights. I watched him sit at my table, in the house I had poured sweat into remodeling. And then Becky appeared, hair tied back, laughter spilling from her mouth, her hand brushing his shoulder like they'd been married for years. That was the moment the betrayal crystallized. The money was gone, the house stolen in spirit if not in law, my wife no longer mine. But instead of breaking me, it gave me direction. Becky and Jeremy thought they had taken everything from me. What they didn't know was that I was just getting started. The night I saw Becky and Jeremy together on my security feed, something inside me shifted. Most men would have raged, thrown things, cried. But that's not who I am. My name is Nathan Briggs, and I've been a soldier long enough to know emotions cloud judgment. When you're on a mission, rage gets you killed. Precision keeps you alive. So I treated this betrayal the same way I would treat hostile territory. Observe, gather intel, make a plan. At 500 the next morning, I sat at the communications desk with a blank email in front of me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and then I typed, "Subject, need legal help. Discreet and urgent. 2. James Whitaker. James wasn't just a friend. He was a brother in arms. We'd served together in Afghanistan before he traded his rifle for a law degree. If anyone could help me, it was him. Within hours, I had his reply. Direct, calm, the same tone he used to take when calling out coordinates under fire. I've got you, Nate. Don't do anything rash. Document everything. We'll handle this step by step. That message grounded me. For the next several days, I became a ghost in my own life. I went through my duties, drilled with my unit, shared jokes in the chow line. No one suspected I was spending every free minute building a case file on my wife and her new lover. I cataloged every bank transaction. I saved screenshots of Becky's withdrawals, marked them with dates and times. I downloaded the footage of Jeremy strolling through my home like a king on stolen land. Every piece was evidence, and I knew someday soon it would be a weapon. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed to stay one step ahead. Becky thought she had blindsided me. What she didn't realize was that I had prepared for this possibility months earlier. My hidden account was growing with every paycheck. My documents and heirlooms were safe in storage. The house, though, it still had my name on the VA loan. She couldn't just erase me. Not legally, not yet. One night, while the desert winds howled against the barracks, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan creaking above me. I thought about Becky's cold eyes at the airport, her dry goodbye hug, her sudden gym nights, her secret phone. She had been planning this betrayal for a long time. But I had been planning something too, even if I hadn't realized it at the time. Survival. That's what soldiers do. We survive. So I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to scream at her. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to let Jeremy walk away, thinking he had taken what was mine. No, I was going to be Patty. Methodical. Precise. Because in war, the enemy always underestimates you when you stay quiet. And Becky? She had no idea that by betraying me, she had just put herself on the wrong side of the battlefield. 2 months after Becky's email, my boots finally touched American soil again. The flight back was quiet. No family waiting at the gate. No welcome home signs. No warm embrace. Just the familiar ache of carrying a duffel bag heavier than my chest. My name is Nathan Briggs, and I had returned not as a husband, but as a man preparing for war on his own turf. I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel under a name that wasn't mine. A place with peeling wallpaper and buzzing neon lights outside the window. Somewhere Becky and Jeremy wouldn't think to look. The next morning, James showed up. Same steady eyes I remembered from deployment, but now framed by wire-rimmed glasses and a lawyer suit instead of fatigues. He didn't waste time with small talk. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of the house deed, bank statements, and loan documents. I expected financial damage, maybe even more withdrawals Becky hadn't told me about. But one paper stopped me cold. It was a refinance application. My house, my name, my supposed signature scrawled neatly at the bottom. Except it wasn't my signature. I stared at it, tracing the loops of the forged letters. Becky had signed my name like she'd practiced it 1,000 times, and beside hers was Jeremy's, bold and smug. Together, they had pulled out $330,000 against my home. My home, the place I had bought through a VA loan earned with sweat, blood, and tears, and years overseas. They can't do this, I muttered, my voice low, steady. They already did, James said. But it's fraud, Nate. Forgery. This isn't just betrayal, it's a felony. We can use this. My pulse didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I felt the same clarity I'd had in Kandahar. This was no longer about heartbreak. It was a mission. Becky hadn't just broken our marriage vows. She had committed a crime, dragged another man into it, and left a paper trail. James leaned forward, his tone measured. We move carefully. We gather more. If we play this right, we don't just beat her in divorce court. We take everything back. Maybe more. I nodded, folding the papers and sliding them back into the folder. I thought of Becky in the kitchen, laughing with Jeremy. I thought of my dog, sitting at their feet like Jeremy was his master. And I thought of that forged signature mocking me from the page. That was the line they crossed. Love, money, trust, I could have walked away from those. But forging my name? Trying to strip me of my honor, my home, my future? That wasn't just betrayal. That was war. As James left the motel, I sat alone with the folder in my lap. The neon buzz outside seemed to grow louder, sharper. My next move wasn't going to be loud. It wasn't going to be messy. It was going to be precise, calculated, devastating. Becky thought she had outplayed me, but she had just handed me the weapon I needed to bring her entire world crashing down. The motel room smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap disinfectant, but it had become my war room. A single bulb hummed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the folder James had given me. Every page, every document was a weapon, and I intended to use them. James called the next morning. We can't rush this, Nate. If we file too soon, she'll spin it as a messy divorce. If we wait, we can prove conspiracy, fraud, possibly even federal charges. I leaned back on the creaking bed. So we wait. Not just wait, James said. We watch. We gather. We let her and Jeremy hang themselves with their own rope. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into the home security system Becky had probably forgotten I still controlled. My house appeared on the screen. Jeremy's truck in the driveway. Becky moving around inside, casual as if it had always been hers. But this time, I wasn't just looking. I was recording. I started compiling clips. Jeremy using my mug. Becky laughing at the kitchen table. Strangers coming and going at odd hours. Each video was saved, labeled, uploaded to the cloud. Evidence. 2 days later, I got an alert from the bank. A withdrawal. Large. $14,600. Gone from the refinance account. I called James immediately. That's good, he said. Good? It ties the fraudulent loan to active theft. Every dollar they move strengthens the case. Still, it burned. That money wasn't numbers on a screen. It was years of deployments, missed birthdays, funerals I couldn't attend, and Becky was bleeding it dry for her new life with Jeremy. James suggested we meet at a diner 10 miles out of town. We sat in a booth by the window, coffee steaming between us. He slid his phone across the table. I dug into Jeremy. On the screen was a record, 2 DUIs, a fraud charge from 2019. Not exactly a Boy Scout, James said. And get this, he's worked with a real estate agent named Daniel Spencer. 3 deals in 2 years, all distressed sales, all military families. I felt my jaw tighten. So this wasn't just Becky leaving me. This was a setup. Looks that way, James replied. Jeremy finds vulnerable women, convinces them to sell the house quick. Spencer flips it cheap, and they split the profits. I stared at the coffee, letting the bitterness settle on my tongue. It wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. "We take them down," I said flatly. James smiled, the same way he had before a mission years ago. "Then we need bait. We let them think they're in control. Meanwhile, we tighten the net." That night, back at the motel, I wrote out my plan on a yellow notepad. Every step, every call, every meeting carefully mapped out. This wasn't revenge. This was an operation. And like every operation I'd ever led, I would see it through to the end. I didn't answer Becky's calls. Not when she left voicemails dripping with concern. Not when she texted, "We need to talk." That was part of the plan. Silence. The less I said, the more she would scramble. And scrambling meant mistakes. James and I met again at the diner. He slid another folder across the booth. Daniel Spencer, real estate agent. He's handled 3 below-market sales tied to Jeremy. All of them connected to women with deployed husbands. My stomach turned. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a pattern, a scheme, a system designed to prey on families like mine. "They're planning to sell your house, Nate," James said. "Quick cash deal. Papers are already moving." The words didn't sting the way they might have weeks earlier. By now, I wasn't even angry. I was focused, clear. This wasn't about a marriage anymore. It was about a mission. The next morning, Becky sent me a text. "Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow, noon. We need to talk in person." I showed it to James. He shook his head. "Don't go. Nothing good can come from talking to her now. Let's use this." So instead of meeting Becky at the park, we parked across the street from my house. A gray morning, mist hanging low over the neighborhood. At 9:45 a.m., Becky left the driveway, headed in the opposite direction. At 10 o'clock, a car pulled up, a white sedan with a real estate logo on the side. Daniel Spencer stepped out. Jeremy greeted him at the door like they were business partners, not thieves. "Showtime," I murmured, pulling out my phone. I opened the home security app, connected to the interior cameras I'd installed last year. There they were, Jeremy and Spencer, standing in my living room, my couch, my photos still on the walls. Spencer walked through with his phone out, snapping pictures, while Jeremy pointed at features like a proud owner. I turned up the audio feed. "List it by the end of the week," Spencer was saying. "Cash buyers already lined up." "420? Jeremy asked. "Yep, we'll list at 470, settle at 420. Everybody's happy." "What about the husband?" Jeremy pressed. Spencer waved dismissively. "Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but deployments, duties, they settle for a check to make it go away." James was already recording the feed. My thumb hovered over the send button. Forwarding the footage to Agent Patel at the FBI. Message happening now. 30 minutes later, unmarked SUVs rolled into the neighborhood. Black windbreakers, earpieces, purpose in every step. From our vantage point down the street, I watched as agents surrounded the house. Spencer and Jeremy walked out in handcuffs, confusion plastered on their faces. My phone rang. Agent Patel's voice was steady. "We've got them on tape. Wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted property theft. This is enough to break open the what?" Down the street, Becky had just returned. She stood frozen on the lawn, her hands over her mouth, watching her boyfriend led away in cuffs, her life unraveling in front of her. For the first time since Kandahar, I allowed myself a breath. Not of relief. This wasn't over, but of victory. The trap had sprung. When the FBI vehicles pulled away with Jeremy and Spencer in the back, the neighborhood was left in stunned silence. Curtains twitched, dogs barked, and neighbors whispered behind fences. And there was Becky, standing in the middle of the lawn, her face pale, her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding back the cold. I stayed in the car, out of sight, watching her. For 13 years, I had rushed to comfort her whenever she looked like that, lost, scared, vulnerable. But not this time. She had chosen her path. My phone buzzed. James was already calling. "They're in custody," he said. "FBI's got more than enough to build a case. But now it comes down to Becky. Question is, how much did she know?" I watched her pacing the driveway, phone in hand, no doubt deciding what lie to send me this time. "She knew enough," I said, flatly. That evening, James met me at the motel. He brought paperwork, thick stacks of it, each sheet a nail in the coffin of the life Becky thought she'd built. Contesting the refinance due to fraud, request for restitution of stolen funds, emergency orders freezing property transfers. "This locks everything down," James said. "She can't sell. She can't refinance again. She can't touch your pension. You've got the upper hand now, Nate." It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like what it was: cleanup after a battle. Necessary, methodical, no celebration. The next day, my phone lit up with Becky's name. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to it once. "Nathan, we need to talk. I didn't know about all this. Jeremy told me you were hiding money, that you were planning to leave me. I didn't mean for things to go this far. Please, just call me. We can fix this." Her voice cracked near the end, but there were no tears. Not real ones. I knew the difference. James listened too, his face unreadable. Classic deflection. She's scared, which means we hold the line. That night, FBI agents met us at their Spokane field office. They laid out evidence on the table: photos, bank records, transfer receipts, even screenshots of Spencer's phone. My marriage was scattered across that table in black and white, reduced to transactions and lies. Agent Patel leaned forward. "Your cooperation has been crucial. This isn't just about you anymore. We believe Ryan and Spencer have targeted at least a dozen other military families. You may be the case that breaks this open." I nodded, my jaw set. "Do what you have to do. Just make sure they can't do this to anyone else." When I left the office, I drove past my house one last time. Lights glowed in the windows, but it didn't feel like home, not anymore. Becky had turned it into something else, an asset, a bargaining chip, a stage for betrayal. I didn't slow down. The house might still have my name on the deed, but it no longer had my heart. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper, a place where lives were dismantled in neat stacks of legal documents. I walked in with James by my side, calm, steady, like I was walking into a mission briefing instead of a divorce hearing. Across the aisle, Becky sat in a dark blazer, hair tied back, eyes downcast. If I hadn't known better, I might have thought she was a grieving widow. But I did know better. Jeremy wasn't there. He was in federal custody, awaiting charges for conspiracy and wire fraud. Spencer, too. Becky was alone, her lawyer whispering in her ear, like he could shield her from the truth that was about to hit. James leaned toward me. "Remember, don't rise to it. Let the evidence speak. That's what wins wars in here." I gave a single nod. The judge entered, and the hearing began. Becky's lawyer started with the expected lines: how the marriage had broken down, how Becky had been financially vulnerable, how Jeremy had taken advantage of her. They painted her as a woman deceived, swept up in someone else's crime. I sat still, hands folded, eyes forward. Then James rose. His voice was calm but sharp, each word landing like a hammer. He walked the court through the refinance paperwork, my forged signature, Jeremy's bold scrawl beside it, Becky's initials on half a dozen pages. He presented bank statements showing money moving directly into her personal account, not just Jeremy's. And then came the recordings. The courtroom fell silent as the grainy footage from my security cameras played. Jeremy walking Spencer through the house. Becky's laughter in the background. Jeremy boasting about the quick sale. Spencer dismissing me with a wave of his hand. When Becky's voice came through, clear, unmistakable, saying, "Nathan won't fight this. He never does. By the time he's back, it'll all be ours." The air in the room shifted. Her lawyer froze. Becky's head snapped up, eyes wide, her mask slipping for the first time. James let the silence hang, then spoke softly. "Your Honor, this isn't a case of a vulnerable spouse being manipulated. This is a case of willful fraud, conspiracy, and betrayal. Mr. Briggs didn't just lose his marriage, he was targeted in a calculated scheme by his wife." The judge's gaze moved to Becky. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The courtroom murmured, the weight of the evidence crushing her carefully built story. James handed the judge one final piece of paper. Motion to transfer sole ownership of the Briggs residence back to my client, along with restitution of funds misappropriated under fraudulent means. The gavel struck. Motion granted. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of something like relief. Not joy, not triumph, just the steady weight of justice settling into place. Across the aisle, Becky sat motionless, her world collapsing in slow motion. This battle was almost over, but I wasn't done yet. The courthouse battle was won. But wars aren't finished until the enemy has nothing left to fight with. Becky still had pieces of her old life, her car, her accounts, her reputation. And I wasn't about to let her walk away thinking she had survived this. James and I met one last time at the diner. He slid a final set of documents across the booth. "This will finish it. Divorce finalized. Property restored to you. Restitution ordered. And Becky, bankrupt. She'll walk away with debt she can't crawl out of." I studied the papers, the black and white words that marked the end of 13 years. My pen didn't hesitate when I signed. My hand was steady. This wasn't a loss. It was closure. A week later, Becky called me. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was ragged, the polish gone. "Nathan, please. I don't have anywhere to go. They froze my accounts. They took the house. I can't even pay my lawyer." I cut her off. "You forged my name. You stole my money. You tried to erase me from my own life. Now you're living with the consequences." Her silence was sharp, broken only by a choked breath. I ended the call. There was nothing left to say. But the final move wasn't about her. It was about me. I put the house on the market, not out of necessity, but out of choice. That place had been poisoned the moment Jeremy's truck pulled into the driveway. I didn't want the walls, the furniture, or the memories. I wanted freedom. Within a month, it sold for more than Spencer's scheme had ever planned, enough to pay off every debt, every fee, and still walk away with a future intact. On closing day, I stood in the empty living room. The echoes of laughter, arguments, late-night talks, they lingered faintly, like smoke after a fire. I placed the keys on the counter and walked out without looking back. The dog, my dog, rode shotgun in my truck. I had picked him up from a shelter after everything settled. He wagged his tail, tongue lolling, blissfully unaware of the battles fought to bring him back to me. As I drove west, toward open roads and clean slates, I thought of Becky. She had traded 13 years of loyalty for a man in a cheap suit and a scheme bound to fail. Now she had nothing. No Jeremy, no house, no money. Only the ashes of the life she'd tried to build on lies. And me? I had something better. Not revenge, not even justice, but peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't living for deployment dates, court deadlines, or someone else's choices. I was living for me. The war was over, and I had won.